a reflection of what's happened in terms of austerity under this government. It is this government that's been cutting the NHS. It's this government that hasn't provided enough school places. So I think there's a whole debate to be had now, and we've got to say, yes, we are listening to what people are telling us.
It'll be a bit late because you'll be out of the EU anyway. So all these things you're talking about, the Posted Workers Directive and all the rest of it,
well,
irrelevant.
Whatever happens to the decision today, we have to have a new relationship with the European Union. Whether we're in or out, that relationship has to be negotiated. And some of these issues will be on the table.
John Mann, the Labour MP, is just joining us from Westminster in favour of leaving the EU. John, what would you say to Mr McDonnell about the way Labour handled this campaign?
Oh, well, Labour was somewhat out of touch. And I'm surprised, David, you're not calling it for a Leave victory, because every single result that's come through was predictable. In the coalfields, where there are no results out yet, I predict it's going to be 2-1 for Leave. In my constituency, turnout was up 10% on the general election. And if you look at, even in Scotland, Dundee, the Scottish heartland for the SNP, every party in the Scottish Parliament voting for Remain, 40% voted to Leave. Wales is going to vote a majority Leave. Northern Ireland is going to vote a majority for Leave. It leaves London, but if we take that Dagenham result, even in London, there's huge disparity. And Labour voters have decisively voted to leave the European Union.
Where have Labour got it wrong then? I mean, let's not go into speculating whether, you know, you're right about all those places, Northern Ireland and the rest of it, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. But where has Labour gone wrong?
Well, Labour's gone wrong by not being in touch with its voters. I've been saying this for the last 10 years in relation to immigration and free movement of labour. I've been saying it in relation to what the offer is to working class people. It's not something new in this campaign. I'm not the only one, but it's a small number who've been saying it at the national level in Labour. I've said it for the last 10 years repeatedly. And what we're offering working class people is 0-hour contracts. What the country's offering, 0-hour contracts, agency work, insecurity, and people are sick to death of it. They've had enough. And that's why, in my area and elsewhere, Labour voters have voted in huge numbers to leave the European Union.
John McDonnell, do you think he's right in this critique of Labour?
I think John's right on a number of the policy issues, but on 0-hours contracts, we've already said we're going to scrap them altogether. In terms of insecurity at work, we've said we'll tackle the issue of the undermining of trade union rights in this country, and that means opposing the government's Trade Union Act. In addition to that, in terms of security, we want to have the workforce more involved in the planning of their company, represented on their company boards. So all of those issues that John has raised, we've actually got policies to deal with them. The issue for us now is how do we get those policies across? What's interesting is if you look at the shape of the vote tonight, it's those areas that are not gaining in any way from the supposed recovery in the economy and have suffered economically over the last decade that are voting for Leave. And I think that is, yes, it's a reflection of what they think about the European Union not assisting them, but I also think it's a reflection of a condemnation of the government's policies over the last 7 years when it comes to austerity. So there's real grievances out there which we think we've got the policies to address, and we need to get those across.
Theresa Villas, as a